Welcome, everybody, to our Public Safety Committee meeting. Closer to the mic. This is my first time doing Councilmember Mum and Council President Beggs. So we're in chambers. And first thing we're going to do is approve minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Nays? Great, thank you. We are going to have mostly discussion today, very few presentations. You've all received the packet, so presumably you've read it, understand what we're going to be talking about today, and have come prepared with some questions. And hopefully we have staff with some answers. So the first thing we're going to do is we will be interviewing our Chase Youth person. And Jacoby, I cannot read your writing, so it looks like Tamila Tolferson, is that right? And I don't see her, is she?
Yeah, it's Taylor Tollefson.
Okay, sorry. And
You're fine.
Jacoby did write it okay, I just can't read his writing, so. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed. Thank you for being on the Chase Youth. We appreciate your commitment to that. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Taylor Tollefson, and I'm a senior at Ferris High School this year. And this is my first year on the commission, and I'm extremely excited.
Do we have questions from council? Go ahead, Councilmember Stratton.
I was going to ask her where she went to high school, but she already told us. So I will ask you, what are your plans after high school? Is there anything that you're interested in pursuing, or what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yes, I'm extremely excited to attend college, hopefully at WSU, and then on to Gonzaga for law school, and hopefully to become a corporate attorney.
Wow.
That is wonderful. Thank you.
That's ambitious. Go ahead, Councilmember Mum.
Hi, Taylor. Thank you for applying. Tell us why you're interested in shadowing a city council member.
I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to work on issues in our community and to give back to a community that is so giving to us. And so I think that it's just a wonderful opportunity.
Go ahead, Councilmember Stratton.
I'm curious to know, our generation, what do you hear are some of the biggest concerns about our community? What your generation would like to see, or what, if you could change one thing, what would it be?
I think right now a major concern is just that we're extremely divided. But a specific topic that I would really like to focus on is literacy. I think literacy in our community right now, especially with COVID and schools being shutting down and everything, is something that kind of got brushed over. And 1 in every 4 kids grow up without ever learning how to read. And that is so shocking to me. And so I really want to go into schools and talk to children about the importance of literacy and the effects that it has on the rest of their life.
Great, thanks.
Councilmember Burke, did you have a question?
Don't, but thank you so much for your interest in joining us. It's going to be fun to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Anybody else? All right. Taylor, thanks so much again. We really appreciate you, and best of luck to the coming year, and then on with your ambitions and your goals. I know you're going to be wildly successful, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right. Next up, Mr. Hattenberg, I think you're going to talk about, I know, let's do community court update first.
Sure. Good afternoon, City Council. Yeah, I just wanted to give a brief update about community court. We wanted to try to start giving these updates a little bit more regularly, just so we can kind of keep everybody informed of what we've been doing. So I'll keep it kind of brief. We have been opened up since last June all throughout the COVID epidemic, meeting in person. Our providers have been meeting both some in person, some virtually. We've been fortunate enough to have access to some tablets and cell phones to continue to make service connections virtually for the providers that are unable to come in due to COVID issues. Court itself is still running, like I said, just as we always were, just obviously at a much smaller number. We have started allowing the public to come in and take advantage of services, specifically at our two branch areas, the Northeast and MLK Junior Community Center. As the participant numbers there are a little bit lower, so we can open up safely to the public and allow the general public to come in and take advantage of our services. Also at the MLK Junior Center, we have our new social service navigator who is part of that grant that we had been given about a year ago. That's working out very well. He's making some connections with individuals. He actually is working on an individual that he just got that it was a teenager, about 19 years old, came in, and the two of them worked together and got a business plan going. And I guess this individual is actually in the beginning stages of starting their own business. So he's doing very, very well there, really doing what we had hoped for the social service navigator as far as connecting to services and reaching out to the community as a whole. We've seen some very good, successful graduations recently. We had an individual just came out of the MLK Junior Center as well. She graduated. She's going to be going into college. She got her GED while she was working with us. And then transitioned directly into going to community college. So she's working very, very well. And she was able to attain housing as well while she was with us. We then had another candidate downtown who just recently took advantage of our respite bed program. And that was that program that I was on here a few months ago, asking everybody for the money, and graciously the city council gave it to us. And that program has been wonderful. This individual was homeless since the age of 12. They literally ran away from foster care when they were a child, have not been in a home since. We were able to work with them, get them in the respite bed. While they were in the respite bed, they were able to transition into assisted living housing. And we're currently working on getting his ID, which is a very large, long, involved process because, unfortunately, he actually doesn't know his real name or his birth parent's name or even his social security number. So it's a lot of work. The community's really working hard with him, but so far it's been very successful, in part greatly because of that respite bed program. And then other than that, like I said, community court numbers are increasing steadily, not anywhere near the numbers we were pre-COVID, but we are starting to see an increase. And providers as well are starting to come back in person more. I think, unfortunately, with this recent surge of the new variant, we might see that decrease a little bit. But we are getting more providers in person. We are making more virtual connections. We're still able to do our lunch programs at all three of our locations, so that's been very beneficial as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Like I said, I want to be here a little bit more regularly in the future, going forward, just to kind of give an ongoing update. But I'm happy to answer any questions while I'm here now.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Wilkerson.
Thank you. Thank you, Seth. So with the numbers being down at the MLK, I believe it's at the Northeast Community Center, I can understand that is very time intensive. What do you see going forward then about the sustainability or the viability of the numbers aren't there to support that? Has there been any talk about consolidation on any level? And also the number of folks who don't show up for community court, what type of follow-up is happening in that arena?
So for the first question, at the moment, there's been no talk of consolidation. Our current goal is to increase our attendance. We've been working with CCI. We're actually working with the Way to Justice to soon do an event that we're going to try to get more eyes on the community center. Our social service navigator has actually been going even door to door in some instances, trying to spread the word. We're going to start a media campaign as far as both social media and traditional media, again, all to really get the word out. So our current goal right now really isn't consolidation. It's about really trying to fix that problem with the numbers and solving it as far as getting more people there. Unfortunately, with the COVID epidemic, that really hamstrings us as far as what we can do with the individuals who don't come into court. We have been able to issue warrants with some individuals. So, I mean, obviously, that's kind of a last gasp scenario. We don't want to do that if we don't have to, but it is something we have to do, and it's something we're going to do if numbers don't increase. So that's something we'll continue to do in the future. But at the moment, we're working really hard with our provider network, our participant network, our social service navigator, myself, just to really get the word out and really try to make one more really hard effort to get those numbers up. We saw numbers were perfectly fine at the Northeast Community Center before COVID. We would expect if COVID wasn't going on, we would have similar numbers at the MLK Junior Community Center. It's just, unfortunately, we're combating this epidemic at the moment. And really, I think at this point, after discussing the CCI, I think it's going to be media blast, social media, and just continuing to get that word out there and making the community both aware of us and comfortable with us.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cathcart, go ahead.
Yeah, is there an ancillary benefit to doing the media promotion? I mean, I think you have specific people who've been sentenced to community court, correct, or directed to community court, and so wouldn't they know where that is, what that is, how to get there? What do you need to do a big media campaign for?
So they would, yes, the individuals that be directed to court would know that court was there. We're doing this to try to increase the number of walk-ins. Community court always, I mean, obviously our court participants are court, but we've always been big on walk-ins and having a general community. Also, even if participants are told to come to community court, we think that by better educating them on what community court is, we're going to increase our attendance rates. To speak quite frankly, with this basis, failure to appears are not uncommon, and I think if we can really work to make them understand what community court is, not just court, but services, we're going to help them. We're going to get connected to housing, food, everything else they need. We're hoping by getting that word back out in the community and really strengthening that with everybody, that they know if they're coming there. If they're coming there for court, they'll come because they know it's going to be court with services, and if they don't have court, they're going to come because they know the services are there.
And with the no-shows, if they don't have a valid excuse for failure to appear, do they just get to keep trying over and over again?
No. Warrants will be issued in those cases. Again, up until recently, we've been very limited with warrants due to state regulations and various stuff with the courts. Those regulations have begun to lift. Now, if individuals are not going to show up, if they're not going to take place in treatment, if we have to, we will issue warrants, and prosecution will ask for warrants if they have to.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? Okay. Seth, thanks so much. I appreciate your time. Appreciate your information. We'll try to get you in the agenda on a more regular basis. These are good updates to have. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Next, we're going to do our online 911. I'm not sure who's going to be talking about that. Chief Meidel, are you or Assistant Chief?
Absolutely, I'm happy to talk about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Years ago, we used to actually have an online reporting block with Crime Check, but it was very clunky. It wasn't used very well. My understanding is there's some errors involved in that as well. So I know that about 2 years ago, we started talking about really enhancing our online reporting capability for as it relates to the city for our community members. And SREC was able to implement a new updated version of online reporting. This is accessible to the community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These will not be for in-progress calls. We still want the community members to call Crime Check or 911, depending on what crime is occurring, what they're witnessing. But these will, in essence, be for crimes that have already occurred, and allows the community member to do it at their leisure. They don't have to wait for an officer to show up, or if it's the middle of the night, they can do it in the middle of the night, the weekends, holidays. And it will theoretically also relieve some pressure on patrol, as folks will be filing their reports online. So just a real super quick rundown of the types of incidents that can be reported online: custodial interference, garage burglary, harassment, lost property, malicious mischief to a vehicle. A supplemental report, if they've already filed a police report and they want to add information, they can do that online as well instead of waiting for an officer. Thefts, trespass, and vehicle prowling. So now folks in the community can go online, fill out the report, they'll get an incident number. That information that they provided will be reviewed by a records clerk to make sure it's complete. And then once it's complete, it will be then entered into our database system as well. So much more convenient for the community members.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how long between when a community member enters something into the system and then that records person takes a look at it, and then also once it goes through that filter, if it is a crime or something that needs a response, will it go out to patrol officers so they can follow up?
Yeah, so they'll get an incident number immediately, but it'll have language in there basically saying this is pending the merging of the report filed online with our record system as well. And a lot of that's going to have to do with a call load in records. How many reports do they have to merge? How many staff do we have working? But I anticipate within 24 hours, typically, we should see that report's been merged. Maybe a little bit longer, just depending on how many cases they have in front of them right now. In terms of reviewing of these, yes, so our crime analysts review, basically their job is to look at what crime is occurring within the city. Are we seeing trends? Are we seeing similar MOs? Is there a suspect identified involved as well? And I also know when I was a precinct captain up north, I reviewed every property crime that came in, from a vehicle prowling to a theft, to try to determine, is there any follow-up that can be basically executed with these crimes. Most of the time they're not, but there will be some review through crime analysis, and then the precinct should be reviewing these as well, looking for those trends.
Councilmember Stratton.
Thanks, Chief, for being here. Just a quick question. How do we get, or how are you planning, or is there a plan to get this information out to the community so they understand how to use this and the benefits of it and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we did a press release. I want to say it was last week. I'm not sure if Julie Humphreys is on. So we did send out a press release. It got a little bit of traction in the media. So it is out there. Also, if individuals go to the SREC website, there's City of Spokane, Spokane County Sheriff's Office, and Spokane Valley. I believe there's another agency or two smaller agency that does intend to sign on at some point. So we did make that initial effort to notify the community. Again, didn't seem to get a boatload of traction, but it did get a little bit.
Any other questions? Anybody? Okay. Chief, thanks very much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate that information. Oh, we have Council President. Go ahead.
Yeah, this sounds great, Chief, but I think we're going to have to put a lot more resources into social media and getting out the word. It's not going to work if people don't have it. So I hope that will become a priority for Julie. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll double check. I think we did push that out as well, but I'll do some follow up with her as well. And it never hurts to send that out occasionally as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Chief Schaefer, I think you have the next one.
One more thing?
Sorry.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
It just popped into my head. Chief, it might be worth looking into possibly getting something in the utility billing. That's always great to get one of those little flyers that has kind of step-by-step information that you just put on your refrigerator with a magnet and you have it. That might be helpful for people that would want to use this, the 911.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. Thank you.
Okay, now, last call. Anybody else with questions or comments? Okay, good. So, Chief Schaefer, I think you've got the AMR contract amendment. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you want to go ahead?
There was a memo that was included in the packet that just outlines the proposal. Essentially, this just gives us another tool in the toolbox to transport patients that meet the threshold for basic life support. So in our system, we would dispatch a Bravo response to these incidents, somewhere around 2,000 to 4,000 a year, and allow ambulances that are equipped with BLS providers to transport those patients. There are other entities in the county now that are using the system. However, we decided to have this discussion before we moved forward with the actual implementation of the BLS units in our system, because it does impact our contract. The other systems, as far as I know, that are doing this are not changing their fee that they charge the patient. We're, much like other places in Washington, we're recommending a decreased cost for EMT level transport or BLS level transport, right in the middle of our comparables at $818 as the base rate. There's 4 agencies that we queried that were above that cost, and there were 4 that were below. So we came in right in the middle and negotiated with that amount with AMR, and that's what our proposal is to the council, to add that additional tool for us to have BLS transport.
Questions? Go ahead, Council President.
Yeah, I read the memo and I was a little confused, but that's no reflection on the writers of it. Are fire paramedics going with this as well, or is it just the EMT from AMR?
It would be just the EMT from AMR that goes with the patient, unless we feel that we need to go. And that's always an option for us. And even with the paramedic ambulances that are in Spokane, we'll often, if it's a critical patient, the BLS units won't be dispatched to critical patients.
Okay.
But if it's necessary, or if we have, if it's concerning, the paramedic from the fire truck can always accompany the ambulance.
Okay. All right. So if I understand it, this allows them to use an EMT instead of a paramedic because they have a shortage of paramedics, but they have to charge a lower rate as proposed in the memo. Okay, great. Thanks.
Any other questions for Chief Schaefer?
Yes, Chief Schaefer, Betsy here. So I'm concerned, as always, with labor. The staffing levels to really execute on this level, since we've been running low, I guess I'm perplexed as how this is going to kind of all work for the good.
Well, these are additional units to the system. So currently, on a day-to-day basis, AMR is hiring, I think, 5 units in the system daily to supplement the existing ALS program that we have that's out there. This just allows us to align our system to take advantage of those resources right now because they're doing interfacility transports day to day. So all it is giving them the opportunity to transport patients that meet that criteria, but also alleviate those calls from the ALS transporting ambulances, and that has a benefit to us because their response time decreases, their availability increases, and that equates to, at the end of the day, better patient care. So I think from a labor standpoint, the Teamsters are the ones that represent the EMTs and paramedics from AMR, and I'm sure they would be definitely on board for additional work and additional people.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Okay. Chief Schaefer, you got off light. Thank you. Appreciate the time. We're going to jump to the mosquito device. And Luis, are you? Yeah, I see you there. The enforcement of mosquito devices. And I would preface this with, talk to Chris Becker about this, and she presented a dilemma that we may have, and that includes you have to hear them before you can respond to a complaint and know where they are. And not everyone can hear them, and we don't have a device that can locate them. So I'm kind of setting this up for you, Luis, but correct me if I'm wrong and let us know, how can we enforce this law?
Yeah, thank you, members of the council, council president. It's not an easy answer for it. The provision actually prohibits the device, or use of the device. So the direction that I've given my staff has been really, if we get a complaint, then let's go ahead and send a kind of a courtesy notice out so we can have open up a dialogue with that, alleged responsible party. So I would say that we would send them the code provision that again prohibits any device that would emit this type of frequency, but also just again trying to educate the public on its use. To date, we have not received an official complaint about any of mosquito device, and we've only received one inquiry like really early on, and it was only just a conversation about if they're permitted or not. So have very little kind of experience or background to share, unfortunately.
Councilmember Burt, go ahead.
Or fortunately.
Or fortunately.
Thank you. So if I go around downtown and report them, then they will be taken down?
If we get a report on one, we'll go ahead and we'll try to locate and or identify the property. Then we'll send a notice. I would say it's not a notice like saying you're in trouble type thing. It's a notice saying, hey, we got a complaint about this device, and here are the specifics on it of the code. Please contact us so we can go ahead and confirm that one either doesn't exist or it's not emitting any frequency to the parameters that are in the noise code.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, not seeing any. Luis, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is this is mine. It was about the purchase of a pepper ball system, but more importantly, the broader discussion about an SBO for criminal justice items, given the legislation that we're required to adhere to now. So I wanted to have a conversation with Major McNabb and then council members and talk about, are we doing one-offs? How are we going to go forward with some of these things? And are we going to make it more of a package? Is it something that we need to be more thoughtful about and just rather than just pushing things out there as they come up? And I'm open to listening to council members as well about this. So Major McNabb, why don't you lead us off and then we can ask you questions.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Kinnear. I appreciate the invitation to be here and talk about this. Pepper balls in particular were a priority item. So I'm saying that because I want to get to your question about the overall picture and what our plan is for this money. Knowing the parameters that these are for one-time expenses. The pepper ball in particular was because we had to shelve some of our less lethal devices because of the conflicting language in House Bill 1054 and House Bill 1030. So we were hoping to get those done as a one-off in a short amount of time to get them out on the street, and as the law says, reasonably available to all of our officers, as opposed to a stronger level of force. So we wanted to get that together as quickly as possible. We do have a plan we put together. I think Chief Lundgren sent that through. I don't have it in front of me right now, but that talks about some of the other purchases that we wanted to make, that including some ballistic shields and some other items like that. But the pepper ball was kind of a priority issue, which is why we put put a briefing paper through now.
You want to tell us what a pepper ball is? That would be helpful.
So the pepper ball is like a paintball gun. It is a paintball gun, except that it shoots little balls that have pepper. You've heard of pepper spray. Well, it's got a dust form of pepper spray in these balls. When they explode, they produce the chemical irritant to create distance and create a diversion, or to provide for area denial in some situations.
So Council, I'm looking for some discussion on this. We'll start with Council President.
Yeah, so that pepper ball thing makes sense to me. I think my concern when we saw the original package is we haven't really had much public process or council involvement on what the priorities are. And I think when we get to our next section, you'll see we want to really make sure that we have more behavioral specialists that can help people get into drug treatment. That might be a higher priority than some of the items. I don't have the items either in front of me from that we did see, but some of them struck me as probably not as important. I think for me, the most important thing in terms of dealing with the new legislation is training. And so what I was hoping is that we would have a study session where we could talk with police leadership and council members about things, and perhaps do a little bit of test driving with the public and our thought exchange tool that can find out what the public thinks would be the top public safety priorities in terms of adjusting to this pretty robust suite of police reforms and new drug laws. I'm really glad the legislature is providing us money, but I really want to make sure that we use it the way the public feels like is a top priority that also aligns with police, and we come up with something as opposed to looking on a list of things that maybe have been on the wish list but may or may not be closely aligned with it. Some of them seem to be a little bit of a stretch to me at first glance, but that may just be my ignorance as well. So I myself am looking for a little more of a public engagement process on how best to use that and some further collaboration and discussion.
Other thoughts on this, Council? Go ahead, Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess if we're going to talk about what's a priority over something else, then it'd be nice to know kind of what those things are. I'm not even sure what's on the list of items that we're thinking about. So if we could have a discussion about all of those items, and but I do think it's really important though that, especially with some of the limits that have been placed upon our law enforcement, that any tools they need, we provide them. And so I think that that's something really important that has to be part of that conversation. But let's go through them and talk about them and see what the priorities are.
Councilmember Wilkerson, do you have some comments?
Well, I appreciate the conversation. I guess I would be questioning the chief what their community engagement would look like or input. And would that be on us as council members, or would they be taking the lead on what these funds could be used for in our community? So it's great to talk about it, but where does it go from here?
Yeah, so when you look at our capital needs, second largest city in the state of Washington, authorized 355 commissioned officers, and you look at the current, the recession we've been in, having to dip into the reserve funds, the rainy day funds to offset some costs that were lost through COVID. Our capital needs are great, and they haven't diminished. And as we've increased the size of our department as equipment ages, we need a constant influx of money to be able to keep up with what we have, let alone to expand and look at what our other agencies doing. So when we're talking about community involvement, some of the things that were on in the legislative reform bills itself were things that were on this list. I'll use the example of pepper balls. The legislators actually encouraged agencies to use less lethal tools such as the pepper ball platform. And one of the struggles we have is we don't have enough of those to have them readily available when officers are responding to a lot of these calls. We're seeing more guns on the street, more weapons on the street than we ever have before. So the legislators actually included the less lethal platforms and tools in the bill. And when you're looking at the pepper ball platforms, that's specifically spelled out in the bills. The shields are things that keep our officers safe as well, and they allow them to maintain that distance and that cover. It gives them more time to communicate with the individual because they have something that will potentially stop weapons if a weapon is directed at them. So when we looked at this, and in order to keep our officers safer, and in order to be able to get community members in custody safer with less force used, these two were two that we felt like these are a priority for us to give our officers the tools they need based on the types of calls that we're going to every single day. And I would argue that one of the best things our department has done is probably not explain to the community the quantity and the scope of the types of calls we're going on where these tools are extremely useful. So absolutely always beneficial to hear from the community, but I also say that I don't think we put out the quantity, the number, and the intensity of the calls that we're going on every single day. So we wanted to try to get these tools, the pepper ball platforms and the shields, quickly because we know it'll keep our officers safer. It will allow us to use a lesser amount of force when we do have to use force to take someone into custody as well. And then at that point, look at what are the next priorities. So when you look at our capital requests for 2022. There's $6.1 million on that list right now. And this money that was given to the different jurisdictions throughout the state would be a huge step towards helping us fill that gap that we have right now.
Councilmember Stratton.
So if I understand this right now, the big question is how soon can you get, your priority is those pepper balls, and the other thing that you said, the shields.
The shields.
So I guess my question is, do you need those like right away? What's your timeline on that as far as priority?
We had hoped to have those as soon as these reform bills went into effect starting July 25th. And there have been many calls where our officers have asked for the pepper ball platforms or the shields, and they're just not available. So what we're trying to do is make those readily available so that each car has one. So if an officer's on a situation where any of the other tools, whether it's a taser or OC-10, is not going to be effective because of the distance, we wanted to give them these tools as soon as we could. So we'd hoped to have these as quickly as possible, and that would have been technically July 25th. But we also understand it takes a while to order these types of items.
And then do you have to time in any training on these two items, or do they automatically know how to use them and do they have to be trained?
That's a good question. So we actually train all of our officers on the Pepperball platform. However, we have hired a slew of new officers, so we would have to train them on that platform as well. Included in the proposal that we sent forward were training rounds to get those officers who have not had the training that they would need to use them as well.
Go ahead, Council President.
Yeah, I just wanted to affirm that I thought the Pepperball platform and the shields were well within the things, and again, I don't remember the whole list, but there were other things that I felt were a little more like what you were talking about, that you were using these funds for police reform to augment your lack of capital funds, and that's what I don't want us to do, is say, oh, we could arguably make the argument, and therefore we can meet those goals. Because I want to make sure that since these are specifically for the police reforms and the drug reforms, which are really critical and I think have some great opportunity, I want to make sure that we're spending the money on the things that are most closely aligned with that. I think the Pepperball and the shields are closely aligned, and I would support getting those contracts out right away. My objection was, I'm just remembering it hazily because I don't have them all in front of me, was to some of the others, and also wanting to make sure that Councilmember Kinnear's proposal for standalone behavioral health that we can use when we're going to talk about once police officers give someone a notice that they've been found with drugs and they're eligible for treatment, that we have a warm handoff, that we make sure that we fund those personnel costs, because getting people into treatment is going to do the best for us on recidivism and everything else. So that's the process I'm looking for, but I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Council President. Appreciate that. Yeah, the sooner we can get those, I think it's going to be better for the community and better for our officers, so thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Mom, Burke, any comments or questions? Okay. I would just say I'm concerned about safety for our officers and safety for the public. So I think there is that line that we need to dance down to make sure that we're doing both and make sure that we are using our funds wisely, make sure that ultimately it is the safety of both officers and the public that we are interested in. So it's not one or the other for me, but both. And I concur that both of these things are priorities, that we should pass them right away, and perhaps take a longer look at some of the other things to make sure that they're aligned with your objectives, Chief, and our objectives as council of what we see as safe for our community, and make sure that we're listening to our community. So appreciate this conversation, all of you, and we can move forward with these two perhaps. And I'm remembering too that we do have a council rule that says that we have to have 2 council members that are willing to sign off on anything that we put on our agenda that ultimately will go on our public safety agenda that will ultimately go on a council agenda. So I'm thinking that Council President, you're okay with these, I'm okay with these, and we could move these forward. Is that right? Okay. Very good. Next we have this is Council President's, but I want to tee you off first because I talked with Mary Miramatsu about the local implementation of new drug possession laws. And it's more complicated than first thought. In fact, it seems very complicated. I'm going to let her start it off, and then you all can chime in with questions or concerns. So, Ms. Miramatsu, do you want to take it away?
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Kinnear. So we have put forth a proposal to adopt the essentially the same language that is in the Session Law 5476, which is the post-Blake drug possession law. But as I say that, I mean, there are details to be worked out. There are logistics that I think the council needs to be aware of. As a matter of policy, it all looks good and it sounds good, but there are a couple of challenges that I think we need to be aware of. And one of those has to do with how this interplays with the police department's authority to contact individuals who've committed no crime. So the first 2 contacts are intended to be referrals to treatment, as we've all discussed. Those are contacts for which police are required to develop probable cause before they can actually make a referral to treatment. And that development of probable cause is with individuals who, some of whom are using and maybe tweaking, maybe involved in excited delirium. Some of these individuals are not rational, but are very, very powerful because of the substances they've ingested. And what we've learned from the case law is that many of these encounters have led to very violent encounters with police officers trying to detain and trying to subdue individuals who might be otherwise subject to arrest. So here we have individuals who on the first and second contacts are not subject to arrest, but for whom officers must develop probable cause as a predicate to the referral. As at least one captain, or perhaps more, have reminded me, if it's necessary, and often it is necessary, to engage with these individuals physically, they wouldn't have the authority to do that, at least not as of yet, not until we have clarification from our legislature. They've set the bar at this point at probable cause. So if officers have not yet developed that probable cause, they would not be able to go hands-on. So that's one of the first challenges I think you need to be aware of. If you have a very, very subdued, compliant individual, that may not be a problem. But where you have individuals who are actively resisting the entire encounter, you're not going to have officers in some situations with the authority to go hands-on to develop that probable cause, as they would have prior to July 25th. With reasonable articulable suspicion, they would have had sufficient basis for a Terry stop. Here they would still have the basis for a Terry stop. They just wouldn't have the authority to use force, any sort of physical force for that purpose. So I wanted to lay that out there just as we go forward so that you're aware of what we're up against. That is one of the big, big legal challenges that we're going to face as we attempt to enforce this. And Councilmember Kinnear, I don't know if you have other areas, and I'm happy to obviously, Councilmember Cathcart, I did see your hand just go up just a moment ago. So happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, and as I said, we had Mary Miramatsu and I had a conversation earlier. It was very informative, and we have some challenges ahead. So Councilmember Cathcart, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, these laws are so screwed up. But my concern remains. I just don't think our officers have the time and resources to put in to develop probable cause in a lot of these situations. And so most people are probably never going to get these referrals. I mean, is there some other way to make sure that we're actually providing these referrals in that first and second contact?
So there are really, truly a lot of logistics that need to be worked out. I mean, again, I think that, you know, there are officers, and this is probably more of an operational question that, you know, our command personnel can answer better than I can. But I do believe that officers, depending on the facts and circumstances, encounter people quite often who are using, or for whom a complaint has been received that an individual is using, either in a park, on a street, downtown, on the sidewalk, while sitting and lying, while camping, in our encampments, in the homeless shelters. I mean, honestly, they come across it all the time. But developing probable cause to actually do something about it is different from hearing about it or thinking that you believe the person might be using and possessing is different from developing the probable cause. So if they have to develop the probable cause, they have to encounter that substance. They have to do a search, a pat down. They have to locate that. They have to field test it, and they have to seize it. And all of that involves a seizure of the individual, which contemplates an officer physically using some modicum of force. And it doesn't take much. We don't have a definition of what it means, of what the legislature intended by physical force. We know what deadly force is, but we don't know what physical force is. So at this point, we're assuming that it doesn't take much. But if you put the hands on the individual, you have seized that individual under the Fourth Amendment, and that is going to invoke a series of legal implications. This is all problematic if you don't have the authority to arrest the individual and you don't have the authority to use force to develop the probable cause that you need for the referral. And again, I don't want to use too broad of a brush. I think that there might be some encounters where that won't be a problem, but there will be encounters where that will be a problem.
But Mary, under our police reform laws, don't they need probable cause even to approach somebody? So I mean, they're probably not even going to get eyes on something happening because they need that probable cause before they can even make the initial approach?
I don't think so. I think they still have all of the authority that they did when they have reasonable articulable suspicion, right? That's under the Terry v. Ohio decision. They can still come up to an individual. They can still investigate if they have reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed or may be committed at that moment or about to be committed. So they still have that authority. What we don't have clarity about is whether they have authority to use physical force to develop that probable cause, which is what we've always believed prior to the imposition of House Bill 1310. So without that physical force, you're going to be able to conduct a Terry stop with the compliant. But if you have individuals who are not compliant, where you might have been able to go hands-on to a limited degree to investigate, you don't have that authority now because 1310 gives you an exclusive list of reasons when you can use physical force, and reasonable suspicion is not among them. You have to have probable cause.
So they can approach using reasonable suspicion, but if there's an incident where that person gets aggressive or something else, the concern is they didn't have that probable cause, they have to go hands-on, and now they risk decertification and all kinds of penalties, correct?
Absolutely. Right. They won't go hands-on without the clear authority in the law, and I think that's fairly reasonable until they get clarity.
Council
President, I think I saw your hand up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was walking downtown the other day and I saw someone, you know, literally shooting up, sitting down. So that's that kind of scenario where that would be probable cause, I'm imagining. But isn't it fair to say that most of the drug possession charges are people who are arrested for something else where there is probable cause, and then they search them incident to arrest and find drugs? I think that's the situation that happens the most often as far as I'm concerned. Police aren't just searching people who are acting weird. They're arresting them for an assault or something else, or trespass, and then when they search them incident to arrest, they're finding drugs. And the Blake reform is you don't get to then add a charge for possession unless you've given them the 2 referrals first. Isn't that the majority of the cases?
Council President, I don't know if it's the majority of the cases, but I would agree with you absolutely. Many instances where a person's already being arrested on something else, where there is probable cause, police are going hands-on, they do have the authority based on the PC, they search incident to arrest, encounter the drug, that'll be a secondary offense. And many of those may be felonies, and many of those will go to the Superior Court and probably be handled by the county prosecutor. For those that are misdemeanors, and certainly there are plenty of crimes, it could be criminal trespass, it could be a DV assault, it could be regular non-DV assault, things that are gross misdemeanors. It could be DUI, honestly. It could be anything that is a gross misdemeanor where search incident to arrest led to discovery of the controlled substance. And yes, absolutely, I would agree with you. But that would then be a secondary add-on referral if it's the first or second time that they've been stopped or contacted for possession of the controlled substance. But certainly for the third and subsequent, it would be a chargeable offense. I agree with you absolutely. Whether it's the majority of the time, I don't know. I do think that you're going to have a frustrated community looking at people ostensibly hanging out downtown in the parks, wherever they might be, looking like they are using, apparently using, and that'll be the instance that I'm talking about, where officers may be limited in what they're able to do by way of an approach. That's going to be where you're going to see that frustration.
But we don't have any control over that because the legislature's already done that. So.
Correct.
Councilmember Mumm, did you want to add to this or no? Okay. Anybody else? Councilmember Wilkerson? Okay. Council President again. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to bring up the issue that I brought up last time, and I've sent you some draft language, is that given that we're living in this world of we have to do referrals, and again, this is after there's already been probable cause found, so that's not the issue. I just don't think if you're giving a piece of paper to someone who's actively using drugs with some phone numbers, that's going to be very effective. And so I know Councilmember Kinnear has brought up the idea of, and I think we have funding for it, to have behavioral health people do warm handoffs. So actually reach back out to people and find a place for them that's suitable for them using their social work skills and encourage them to go. Now, if we found a warm bed, available bed for them, and they still say no, then obviously that counts as a referral. But I am skeptical of counting, just giving someone a piece of paper with 12 phone numbers on it, because I just don't think that's going to be effective. And I think the intent of the Blake laws was an actual referral. So I'm proposing, thinking about changing your draft somewhat to make it clear that it needs to be at least a good faith attempt by our people, not police officers. They're too busy and they have a different skill set to make that warm referral. And then if the person rejects that, then that counts as one of their 2 strikes there. So I guess I'm just wondering what your feedback is on an idea like that.
Well, I mean, I think it's a policy question, and I would also invite. We have our majors here, and our assistant chief and our chief, and they may want to weigh in on that, just logistically how that would work. I mean, I think it's whenever we can do more meaningful referrals, that's a great thing. Right now, what we have is just the language that comes directly out of RCW 1031-110, and so that came out of the what we're calling the Blake Bill 5472, and what it does is it amends RCW 1031-110 so that it sets up a process. And the process can be more robust locally if there are the resources to do that. And I wouldn't have any objection to that if it can logistically be worked out. But what I don't want to do is nullify 1031-110 by creating something that is so local in the local ordinance that if amending the law, as they undoubtedly will. I mean, this whole law sunsets in 2 years. And so once it sunsets, they're going to have to regroup, rethink, extend, reshape, and fashion. What we want to do is maintain a law that is consistent with, if we're adopting it by reference and incorporating it into the municipal code as hereinafter amended, then we'll want to maintain the language of the RCW. But that doesn't mean, Council President, that you can't create logistically a local program that is more robust, has more meaningful referrals, the soft handoff, and more outreach with mental health. I think, there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I would certainly encourage that. So my feedback is not to not do what you suggest. My feedback is to maintain the language of the state law so that we don't have to keep amending the local ordinance, just so that we can stay on track with what state law intends by way of officers being able to avail themselves of the framework from 1031-110, because that's the chapter, the statute, that allows officers to divert, whether it's mental health or substance abuse. It gives them the specific authority to divert to a mental health facility or to a substance abuse facility when they have probable cause. And those are the magic buzzwords that intersect with House Bill 1310. If they've got the probable cause, they may have the basis to use some modicum of physical force to accomplish that arrest, but what they do with that person is not put them in jail, they divert them. And so we want to make sure that we continue to have that authority and that our local ordinance models that.
Do any of our majors or Chief, Major McNabb, Major Olson, anybody have a comment on that? Go ahead.
Well, first off, thanks for the opportunity, Councilmember Kinnear. Also, I'll note that Councilmember Wilkerson was trying to flag you down as well. I'm looking at it from as a patrol over major over patrol. Sorry, how operationally we can do this. Now, if there are steps put into place that could be taken down the road or after the fact, but practically speaking, when an officer comes across a subject that is either in possession or using controlled substance, right now we can't do anything with them because we don't have a law that we can use to enforce locally. So in essence, right now there is no law prohibiting mere use or possession of controlled substance that is practical for the officers to enforce until we get something enacted. And what we need to do is have something that the officer can do in the scene. Now, there needs to be action taken thereafter. As the council president indicated, some sort of soft handoff. That doesn't sound like that's something that is done within the police ranks. And I don't know what that looks like, but we need to put into place something that they can actually take action with at the time of contact.
So it was my idea to actually pair up a mental health provider with officers, especially around our parks and downtown, so that you wouldn't need to then duplicate efforts. So you'd actually have somebody there that could help the officer deal with the person that they are wanting to refer. And I've worked with Chief Meidel on getting more individuals that we can, hiring more from Frontier Behavioral Health, so that we could actually implement something that's a little bit more robust and something that where we're not short of staff. We have somebody there that can augment what the police are doing. And that we're still working out the details of that. But I'm hopeful that going forward we could pair those up so that, as Council President says, we have not just an officer that's enforcing the law, but we have a mental health provider that could actually do that warm handoff, that referral, and talk to the person and perhaps talk them off the ceiling. I mean, you're upset already when you see a police officer coming for you. So having somebody that could calm the situation might be helpful. And certainly we can talk about this more offline, but I wanted to get the conversation going and get us thinking about what else? What else could we do given the constraints of what we've been handed? What else could we do that would make this work and work for our community? So I'd be happy to entertain other comments or ideas. Be great. Go ahead, Major McNabb.
Hi, thank you, Councilwoman Kinnear. I just want to add to what Major Olson was saying and add to what Council President was saying. If you think of process in the way that somebody comes about finding somebody in possession of illicit drugs, it's usually when we have probable cause already, and it's usually when we're in the process of arresting them for another offense or a warrant or something, and they have the drugs in their possession, in their pockets or in their backpack, what have you. I'd say that that is the vast majority of the ways we come about finding illicit drugs. I think the Council President's example of somebody shooting up on the street is a kind of a one-off. There's something we don't come across very often. So in terms of process, it'd almost be as if you'd have to have a mental health counselor or a social worker with every officer on the street, because I think that you're going to be encountering these situations all over the city and all over the shifts, 24 hours a day. So I think a warm handoff might look a little bit better and be a little more functional, is if we could do it maybe as a follow-up later on, where somebody contacts that person, hopefully they have an address, or hopefully we can find them somewhere and make the referral that way.
I like that. Council President, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to affirm that's how I imagined it. It's great if we have our behavioral health people out there, but what I was imagining is, they'll be charged, they'll be going to court, and then our follow-up person could actually go to court and do that there and sort of finalize that diversion idea. So we know where they're going to be, we know when their first appearance is. So I'm totally with you. As a practical matter, it's going to be after the fact, and probably a little better if the person's probably a little more sober and the gravity of the situation, and they're probably more likely to be accepting of it. So I totally agree with you, Major McNabb.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Just process-wise. So if you encounter somebody, they stolen a vehicle or something, and when you arrest them, you discover drugs. So in that instance, obviously they would get arrested for the vehicle theft. But would they get a referral then in lieu of charges related to the drugs, and then that would be one of the three potentially? Is that how that would work?
Yeah, and I guess we need to decide what a referral is. And so that's the problem and the question that everybody needs to agree on.
Okay, it sounds like we have a little bit more work to do, but I think we can get there. And Mary, let's you and I and some other folks put our heads together and see if we can't work out some of the details and then move this forward. If that's okay with you?
Yes, of course.
Okay, super. Let's move on to...
Kinnear, before you close...
What? Sorry?
Before you close this out...
Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment to McNabb's comment to Council President about the one-off, someone on the street shooting up drugs. That is not always the case. Again, he said that is a one-off. I just want to hear that again, because that's what the community is hearing, that is what's driving a lot of the fear that's out there. And I appreciate the clarity on that, which circles us back around to the funding we got to help with these new laws, to stand up engagement of how we can go forward and make these work for everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Let's go on. We have 15 minutes allocated for the next item, which was the Capital Funds SBO. And I've invited Mr. Dunavant, and I know I saw Tonya here, yes. So wanted to have a discussion very briefly, because I think we as council had one agreement and one idea of how we wanted to move forward with capital, and that doesn't seem to be the case now, so something else has happened. So I would invite Mr. Dunavant. Are you there? Yes, you are. Could you talk a little bit about what some of the alternatives were that council was interested in? Okay, we're not seeing him or hearing from him. All right. Councilmember Mumm, do you want to, in lieu of?
Yeah, I can try to go track him down up here. I did see him. He was planning on coming on. One thing I want to clear up is in the briefing paper, there was a statement that said that the council determined they were ending the SIP loan program. And I don't believe that is correct. The council determined they were going to fund capital for fire and police and wean off of SIP, but there are other things that we use SIP for. So I just want to, in an umbrella way, that's my understanding. If someone has other understandings, I'd love to hear it, but we need to correct that document.
Sorry, Council, I got a new computer, so I've been having trouble getting it to go here. I think I'm on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
One of the things we've been working with, and it started before, is trying to find a way to enhance the capital funding mechanism so that in the future years we would have more funds available than what was originally anticipated, because I know that in the conversations that have been going back and forth with public safety is the need is growing greater than what was originally set out in the plan for 2019 through, I think it's 23 or 2024. But in the short run, the council has been trying to stick with that plan and get off of the SIP loans if possible, so that it becomes a cash basis funding model. So we had created earlier this year. I had prepared a few options, and you can create as many as you want. These are just a few different options that would give the council an idea on various options to increase the funding, which means putting more money into the plan than what we've been doing. I think right now we're up to close to $6 million a year. The council was going to add another $500,000 this year. It was part of their budget proposal, but the administration asked that they not do that and just preserve those funds for the general fund. So that's the continuing dialogue, is the balance between how much of this general fund money do we transfer over for capital funding, the operations versus capital. So that's what we were going to work on. I have been getting some more information from finance and accounting regarding the SBO, and as I finish that, based on some of the new information, I'll follow up with council on the ability to maybe move forward with the SBO, either as presented or with a minor tweak. So that's where we are now. Matt and I were going to work with the council to start re-reviewing those options that were presented, so that going forward we can try to find a way to meet some of the additional needs that police and fire identified.
Council, do you have? Go ahead, Councilmember Mumm.
Sure. So we still need SIP for other things, though. We're not shutting the program down, correct?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that the intent was just the original intent of the public safety capital program was to use the SIP loans in the early stages, just because it was going to take a while to build up enough cash to be cash basis, but eventually it was supposed to wean off so that SIP loans would no longer be needed just for this program, but they'd still be available for whatever other uses the council and the administration agree upon.
Council President.
Thank you. And just for those that are watching, SIP is a way for the city to sort of loan money to itself instead of using outside monies, which is much more economical and better for the taxpayers.
Council President, go ahead.
Yeah, two things. So the original plan was for many years in a row, we were taking our 1% tax increase, which is about $500,000, and then we were matching that by another $500,000, so $1 million but that was accruing extra. So one year it was $1 million, the next year was $2 million, the next year $3 million, $4 million. So that's the trajectory we were on. And then COVID hit, and so the administration asked to take a pause on that. Our revenues seem to be recovering. And so the idea was by layering on an additional $1 million each year at the rate of spending on capital, we would eventually get to the point where we did not need any SIP loans for capital, and we'd be on a cash basis. So that's one thing. And I haven't seen any direction from council to go any differently than that. And at some point, we would pay off our debt service for the existing SIP loans, and we would not need any more SIP loans for capital. Now that means, though, that's a chunk out of the general fund of $1 million a year, hopefully out of growth in the general fund, not out of limited proceeds. But the second piece, and I think the most important piece, is there's been a little bit of, I think, slippage on financial accountability. And it's not just because police and fire want to spend money on things like that. It needs to go through a public engagement process of how much money do we have to spend on capital, because there's all sorts of important things that we all want throughout the city, all over. And so we have to do prioritizing. In these tough budget times, it's even tougher. And that's the piece that's missing. So in our streets program last year, I felt like we retook control as a council of our fiscal management responsibilities. And we asked the streets department, tell us what are the projects you want to do. Tell us the ones that are on your list and you didn't want to do this year. And so that we can invite the public in council to make the final decision of which projects get funded which year. And that's what seems to be missing. So I'm calling out to continue that process, which should be the normal fiscal management process of council, is to hear all the things that police and fire want and what's most important, and then set a budget within our means and prioritize. And if it means delaying something, we might need to, but sometimes it's something like that rebreather system, which was absolutely critical and was really almost non-negotiable. But that meant we have to not do something else. So, and also I think we need to make sure there's a balance between fire and police. It's gotten a little bit out of balance the last few years. It used to be pretty much 50-50. So that's what I'm calling for, is that kind of fiscal management and public process, so that the public, not that they get to decide, but they get to share with us. Again, we've got this great tool, Thought Exchange, and other tools that we can use and find out what's really on people's minds and hearts.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, public process is great, but I think as Chief Meidel pointed out earlier, you want to make sure the public actually has all the information at hand in order to have a public process that actually gives us some good solutions. But I would just say, I just simply don't agree that we need to raise taxes to support our law enforcement with their capital investments. I think I'm always happy to listen to a need if there's a need that we actually need to raise taxes. I don't see that at this point in time, especially while we're still dealing with everything that we're dealing with. People are struggling to stay in their housing. I mean, this is just an increased cost on people's livelihoods. So I don't think right now is the time to raise taxes again. But on a case-by-case basis, it's something I'm always willing to entertain if it's an actual need that we have. But I think we can prioritize and figure out how to get these tools for our officers.
So, Councilmember Cathcart, I'm confused because I'd never heard anybody say raise taxes.
1% property tax increase is an increase in tax.
We do it every year. It's not, we do it every year.
Doesn't change that you're still increasing taxes on the public.
Well, that we've done that, and that's how we've been funding our capital. So, what is it, $30 on a house, something like that? But yeah.
And I would just argue that I think there's a better way.
Anybody else?
I'd like to hear Mr. Cathcart's better way. Happy to hear it. Let's put it on the agenda.
Sure. I'm more than happy to have a robust budget discussion. I'm still waiting for one. It's been a year. We still haven't had one. I'm ready.
We just heard from the mayor. We're not getting a budget proposal probably for at least another month. If you can help us get it out of there faster, I'd love to have your help.
I'd love to see it sooner.
Okay, we've kind of segued into budget. Let's not do that. Next, we've got 3 different items. And I'm looking for Chief Schaefer to help us lead this discussion. And the first one is the fire vacancies. You sent me that list. I think it was 27 plus. I know that there are some folks that are in training right now at the academy. So can you update us a little bit on that?
Sure. During the period of COVID, especially now with the increase that we've seen, that is coming into a factor with everything that we're seeing across our department in terms of staffing, mandated overtime, shifts unable to fill, and people actually being deployed to be part of the solution. So currently, we've got 27 positions in operations that are open. The plan is to recruit 4 to 4 with civil service because we currently do not have a list. We haven't had a list for a while that's been refreshed. We use public safety testing, and part of the public safety test agreement is that we want to honor the past practice that we've had in our community of having free tests so that there wouldn't be a barrier in terms of a cost for a test. So that's going to be our priority in honoring that. Even with COVID, we're working to work through. We're planning with the provider to make sure that we have the ability to have a safe test, and that'll be free to our community. Recruit, hire, and Q1 we'll be having another academy. That academy may be 20 people, or it may be 15, and we'll split it up. It all depends what happens in our community with vaccinations and the virus. To be quite honest, that is leading a lot of our decisions right now. We have to provide safe space, and we have to provide an instructor to candidate ratio that guarantees that we will not be part of the problem. So that's the plan right now. I know police has a number of vacancies too. We're both struggling a little bit with recruiting and bringing people on during a pandemic, but we're doing the best that we can, and civil service has certainly been a partner with us in that.
And so we've got vacancies, people retired, there are people are leaving. We also, I understand, a lot of people are out sick, so that creates another kind of vacancy. And when you say mandated overtimes, what exactly does that mean?
I think I'm going on 17 years now, 16 or 17 years, and in that period, I have never had to order somebody to work. We're doing that now. Much like our comparables that have been warning us about this problem over in California because of wildland fires. They've had a fire season that's turned into a year. They were telling us, those chiefs were saying, you're going to get to a point with your staffing where people are just not going to want to come in. You can't entice them with money anymore. And I used to say, you're crazy, because we've never had that problem. Now, predominantly with the pandemic, people don't want to come in and work on their days off. When they get their time off, they want to spend time with their family. They've been cooped up. They want to get outside. And with our call volume is well over 10% of an increase over the last year. It is the busiest that I've ever seen it in our emergency medical system, as well as our fires. And we lost 5 people to fire in a 1 week period, which is unacceptable in my mind. And a lot of us are struggling with that. Throw on top of that, we just lost 2 firefighters in the line of duty within just a few days. So there's all these external stressors that are encircling our employees and making it very hard to entice them to come back to work when we have a vacancy. So normally the routine is that we hire off of a process identified in the collective bargaining agreement. It goes by seniority. There's a list based on somebody who may have taken overtime the last time that gets sent to the bottom of the list. We're going through the list a number of times, and then we'll get to a point where we just call somebody. If they answer, they have to come to work. We're on duty today, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and we know we have a vacancy. we can order them to work.
So
that's where we're at right now.
That's concerning on a number of levels. I'd love to have some other council members chime in here. When we have people who are working overtime, it puts them at a risk as well. So I'd love to have some other council members chime in. Go ahead, Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, and I've heard concerns from some of the rank and file about that directly. But I'm wondering, you said there's 27 vacancies. How many of those are truly vacant because the position's empty, and how many of those are just folks that are out because of COVID? Are those actual?
Those are actual positions that are funded in our budget that are not filled. So on top of that, there's also people that are long-term separated that will likely come back but may not.
So I know obviously with law enforcement it's a little different, and they've struggled to fill some of their vacancies. Is that similar for you guys just because of just conditions today? And you said it's hard to get people to work. Is it also hard to find people to fill those positions? And what is your guys' strategy to try and identify those potential new hires?
We haven't refreshed our list. So the way the lists work with civil services, it gives us a pathway to hire for 2 years. We've exhausted that list, and it was smack dab in the middle of some of our busiest COVID times. So we deferred activating the remainder of that list. Plus, we were down well over half of it. We didn't want to start a class without knowing what our future was, especially with this pandemic. So now that we've got a little bit of clarity moving forward, we've got a vaccine in the community. We're hopeful, we're cautiously optimistic, but and we're going to move forward. Q1 is our goal to restart the entire process, but we're going to be very pragmatic and careful to make sure that we do it without risking any of our candidates. And even the testing, because you're not only the written test, you're in a confined space, but when you take the physical agility, you are in a tight space and really close to your evaluator and exhausting, breathing a lot. It's going to be an interesting process to go through. Hopefully that answers the question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Chief Schaefer. Is there any way we can speed up the process on the EMT certification? Is that something our paramedics could do in-house? Because I know we require that. Or are there some ways, any other ideas here to get things up quicker?
Well, fortunately for us, the candidates come to us with EMT. So we don't have to add that on top of the academy or teach that ourselves. I know there's a push to eliminate that requirement. But that's a baseline for service, and we cannot teach it ourselves.
Because what I heard through someone who reported from AWC is by potentially removing that EMT certification as a qualifier to apply, that we would teach after they hired or during the hiring process, because it was something that was not super time consuming, but it might be a barrier to applicants and it might reduce our applicant pool. It was just an idea.
Yeah, we looked at that, and one of the problems, we aren't an agency like others that have the ability to teach inside. There's a limit in a region on how many EMT schools that you can have, and we've maxed that out. So if we wanted to hire people, if we want to go through the process to change the rules, which would take months with civil service in the process, and we wanted to eliminate that requirement, we would have to probably contract with another company, somebody to teach our EMT classes for us. And that's always something we can look at, but we weren't ever able to identify a scientific connection with evidence that that serves as what civil service calls as an artificial barrier. We specifically had them look at that and determine whether or not it was an artificial barrier similar to a driver's license. We've heard that argument in the past as well. And it's simply a fundamental part of the job, and it's pretty well universal across the country. But we can certainly look at that again. I always like going back and looking at standards, but the train's pretty well down the track in this category. We should be marketing those positions here within the next couple of weeks.
Well, if I come across their information, I'll share.
Yeah, thanks.
Councilmember Stratton, go ahead.
So if I'm and I know things are crazy right now, but if I'm a firefighter right now and I'm working 24-hour shifts or 12-hour shifts, I don't know how you cut those down, and I get a call to come back and work another shift and I say no, what happens to me?
Well, with our collective bargaining agreement, the only way that you could really say no, if we get to that point, is if you're unable to perform the duties of the job or have an outstanding situation. Like, I'm a sole parent, I can't come in, I don't have child care, or I just had a drink of alcohol, or I'm not in the country, or I'm not in the state. Those are okay. I mean, we're not going to order somebody to come off a vacation in Hawaii or anything like that, or leave a kid at home. But if same thing happens for us if there's a second or third alarm fire, people will have to come in for those situations, and same thing with the callback. Doesn't happen a lot, but it's happening. I mean,
that's what scares me. Is it just seems really unsafe to have. I mean, my brother was a firefighter, and so I know a little bit. But it just seems unsafe that if you have a firefighter that's been working 3 days solid and they get to go home and they get called back in, it makes me worry for them, because I don't know how long you can work people like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. They can't add additional shifts past their 48 hours. So we send it out via a page right now. And we don't have a mandate after they leave the station for a day. So if they leave a station for the day or 24 hours, we don't call them back. It's only within that certain period.
They can get some rest then.
And then we have a 72-hour time limit, 72-hour limit, so they can't work longer than 72 hours. I misread that. 72, not 48.
Well, I would just say that 72 hours is a tremendous amount of time to be in that position where you're responsible for your own safety, but others' safety as well. So burnout would be a real issue, as would just the safety of everybody that you're dealing with, including yourself. That concerns me. I want to move into
2 hours is okay.
Oh.
It's a bargaining issue. It's actually in the.
But again, I'm still concerned about that. I wanted to move into the loaning, because the loaning of firefighters is directly related to the conversation that we've been having, and that is we have agreements with other jurisdictions. So correct me if I'm wrong, we have to have, and how does this work? Do we have something in writing? Do you just get a phone call? How do we know that other jurisdictions are requesting our assistance? So can you enlighten us on that?
Sure, we get dispatched. Oftentimes we'll get dispatched through the dispatch system, or we'll get notified as the area coordinator. There's always an area coordinator on duty in the county, and we always have an executive chief on call. That phone call will come to the executive chief on call, and that executive chief will make the decision whether or not to send resources, whether it's a hazmat team, tech rescue. Oftentimes, if not all the time, there is a life threatened when we do that. And I don't know that we've ever said no.
And so you wait until you get that call before you actually dispatch people. You wouldn't go out, or you, not you, but the group wouldn't go out unless you get a request. So you're not just going to go out trundling off to Grant County or whatever to assist when you have not been asked. Am I correct in that?
Oftentimes that's true. It depends. Chief officers, we have an agreement that we can self-initiate on our mutual aid partners incidents if we're closed or if they need it. But there's often times, if not all the time, a phone call that goes along with that prior to deploying.
I saw some hands up. Councilmember Mum, go ahead.
So I'm having some hesitation on participating in what's probably going to be a busy September with our current situation. We've had, as you know, 2 separate fatal incidents. They just happen within a month, a couple weeks of each other. And just the fact that we're so stretched. I wonder if there's a way that we could, if we're not hitting a certain staff minimum, say, look, we can't do this kind of exterior mutual aid right now until we're back up to staffing. It doesn't feel right.
Well, I think every situation's different, and I'm not sure that the technical part of this may be a little bit more difficult to understand, especially today we're staffed with 73 people on the floor. Every single one of our apparatus is staffed ready to respond. I think we've got 5 or 6 calls on the board, and I think we've got 8 people deployed across the Pacific Northwest, and it's a red flag day. So all those variables for us would probably go into the decision that the chief officer makes. But all of our chief officers are well over 25 years and have the experience to make that decision. Especially our ops chief is well aware of what the depth that the system can take. So we're not going to risk any lives in Spokane, but we do have the depth internally to send resources out if somebody else's life is in danger, like we have in the past.
But then I get to
let me say this too. On both of those incidents where we did have loss of life, those partners that we send resources to, those partners were here in Spokane on those fires with us. We rely on them just like they rely on us on a day-to-day basis.
Are they experiencing the same kind of depth of loss of staffing as well?
I think everybody is. San Antonio I just had a meeting with the chief in San Antonio on a metro call, and all of us, from Rhode Island all the way through to California, are all seeing the same thing. A lot of it's...
I was meaning our partners, not across the country. I was meaning our partners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can I follow up on a cost question, if I may?
Go ahead.
When we are loaning out and we're going to get paid back for that, they pay what? All our expenses, including benefits and the overtime?
Total cost of compensation for the employee that goes and the overtime attributed to that employee, plus the backfill total cost of compensation and overtime for that position.
Okay, that was my question. So not only the person that goes, but the person that has to work overtime for going.
Yes, ma'am.
All of that comes together, and then that is repaid back to where? Because we just want to make sure the general fund, which is basically paying extra overtime we hadn't budgeted for that we have to take away from other departments or other programs, we want to make sure that all of that repayment that we potentially loaned is coming back to the general fund.
And you'll be seeing another one of those. Those are the SBOs that we send to council requesting reimbursement or access to those monies to go back to our budget. Right now, but
not the general fund?
Well, right now, when the firefighters come back, they give us their paperwork. We process the paperwork, bill the fire. When the fire sends their check, it goes to the City of Spokane general coffers, and then we come to you and request those general dollars, those general fund monies go to the fire department. That's how the system works currently, and that's all inclusive of everything. Everything, including the vehicles and the incidentals, the per diems, all of those costs are bundled for you to approve to give back to us.
But then how does the general fund get paid back from the SBO extra that hasn't been budgeted for that year?
We budget a portion, and I think actually Kevin or Michelle might be on here that could explain the SBO process a little bit better than I can, because that happens in the dust in the background. If you're on there, Michelle, anyone?
I see her.
You guys see her?
I do.
This is Tanya Wallace, but we will get you that information and follow up, council member, on how those SBOs work.
Thanks, Tanya.
That was going to be my question as well. Thank you, Councilmember Mum. And that kind of goes into our next item, which was update on just July overtime. I've got, over $500,000 that I've found. That's a tremendous amount of money. So I do think we need some answers to the overtime question and to all of the questions we've asked today. in terms of safety of our folks, safety of the community. And I understand that some of these things are bargaining items. I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure everyone's safety. And I'm feeling like we're really walking on eggshells right now when it comes to that. And we know that there have been some fatalities, but I think we need to really take a harder look at this. And I look forward to the conversation, Tanya, about the overtime and where it goes and how it gets dispersed. Does anybody else have any questions for Chief Schaefer? Okay.
Mike does.
Oh, Councilwoman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if we were, and I know this would be a big if, but if we were to change the structure of how our firefighters work from kind of that 24-hour model to more of a traditional model, do we know how that would affect staffing levels and overtime and things like that? Has there been a good hard look at that sort of change and what the impacts would be? And then my follow-up, and this is maybe for Tanya or somebody else, I'm just kind of wondering what the status is of the overtime look that we had approved, I think well over a year ago now, and to see where that's at and when we're going to get some feedback, because that would be immensely helpful to have that data.
Yes, council members, let me give you an update because we did have a meeting even today. We're starting the scoring process with our proposal. We had 3 vendors submit proposals for our overtime project, and we had a meeting today about starting the scoring process. There are 6 folks involved in scoring scoring all the proposals. There may be a phase 2 round of scoring involving interviews with the vendors, with the proposers, and certainly reference checks. And so we anticipate within 3-4 weeks having a recommendation to all of the city council to consider, and then moving onward from there. We do have to remember we want to take our time and do this right and review all of the detail. We have involved union members from both the Guild and Local 29 to participate in this project so that it is very balanced, very detailed, and we're bringing the best information forward to the city council. I would still like to highlight that any of the recommendations, or I'd say at least most of the recommendations, will be subject to bargaining as well, but at least we'll have the data at hand. So be expecting something in about 3 to 4 weeks, council members, after our very robust review and scoring process.
And Mike, I can answer. When we had a consultant here a couple years ago that looked at 1014s and 12-hour shifts and split up 8-hour shifts. And, with the amount of overtime that you have to pay out and how those shifts go, we would have to actually add staff to be able to make those work for our deployment system. There could be some benefits for us in terms of peak staffing. However, like Tanya so eloquently mentioned, there are all working conditions and hours and costs to be factored in. And that's always been a tough thing. The traditional fire service shift is a 24-hour shift. All of our comparables use that. That would be a very, very tough sell for our bargaining unit members.
We have Councilmember Wilkerson first, and then Councilmember Mumm.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little perplexed. I thought the study was already underway and we were going to be receiving information, not that we were just starting to get someone to do the overtime study. So, because we've been talking about it, to my knowledge, for a year.
Council members, we have been talking quite a bit about it. We've had an internal audit review this. And then in the budget for 2021, you did approve up to $150,000 for an outside consulting firm to come in and do that work. So it was really late spring after we had finished the Questica contract. We immediately started moving to work on this RFP. We did have to put it out for bid because of the potential size. So we drafted the RFP. We finished the RFP by the end of June and had it out on the street through July. All RFPs, by the end of July, and then all of the proposals were due in about the middle of August, and we're moving right along with the timeline that we have the ability to move along with. So while we've been talking about it for a while, there were a lot of other steps that had to take place in between that.
We have 5 minutes left, so Councilmember Mumm, really quick, and then you're going to have a request at the end of this. Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Thank you, Tanya. I'm really glad it's getting done. It needs to get done. But I just want to make just a pitch for things while you're working on it. When we did an initial study in the council on this, one of the problems was there was sort of unlimited overtime hours. There was no cap, and we were burning out our police and fire who are taking on these extra shifts. I don't think that's necessarily working, something that has to be bargained. I think that's just policy in terms of making sure that we aren't having people stay up, serve multiple days, and that sort of thing. Also, we heard that how overtime is approved and the policies of who approves, and do you just approve the whole shift all at once, or should you approve individual people? That also isn't necessarily a bargaining piece. That's something that we can do and handle. That's something we can improve on. And finally, who gets called first is rather interesting. I think the police and fire do it different, and I hope that is looked at as well in this RFP, whether it's seniority or is it just rotational. And I think we would be surprised to learn different methods have different outcomes financially. Thank you.
Okay, so we are at the end of our agenda, and for the good of the order, Councilmember Mumm, you had something you wanted to say.
I just wanted to pass on to Chief Meidel, and he may have, is he still with us? Not seeing him.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm still here.
He's here.
Oh, hi. Hey, we've been getting a lot of communication from the public, and I don't know if it's just somebody churning it on social media saying, City Council has defunded the police. That's the thing. You've defunded the police, and it's causing all these problems. Can you help us? Are you getting the same questions? I think we need to work on explaining to people that we have funded the police. We've given raises to the police. We are funding police initiatives. How can you help us with this?
He's rubbing his eyes. That's not a good sign. Go ahead.
You're on mute.
Thank you. That was my most profound statement that I was going to say, so let me see if I can remember. Councilwoman McNear and I discussed this as well last week. I think, number one, we discussed the appropriateness and in this instance, lack thereof of some of these conversations that are occurring on calls, right? Law enforcement should be apolitical. Our job is to go out, keep the community safe as much as we can, while understandably we'd all agree we work within politics. Our goal is to not become political, so we must be mindful of those. I think some of the frustrations, though, that are bubbling up to me is and again, I know we've talked about this ad nauseum. I just want to be transparent in answering your question. When I go to roll calls, I try to hit every single in-service. We have in-service 3 times a year. I make myself available for every single one. And the frustrations that I'm hearing from our staff is vehicles. We haven't really had a good vehicle purchase in multiple years. Some of the equipment that we're needing that's aging, we're struggling to get the equipment as well. So I think what you're hearing is that frustration of vehicles and equipment and getting the proper funding for those. Having said that, it's not appropriate for our officers to go on the call and deal with somebody who's been a victim and talk to them about those types of incidents. So we did actually have a discussion earlier today with staff about getting that message out to our folks as well. But again, I would not be doing my due diligence if I didn't explain to you, I think, what the overwhelming consensus and consistent frustration is at the roll calls. And I think that's probably what is the genesis behind what is rumbling up. But I need to acknowledge first, though, that's not appropriate on calls. When we're dealing with the victim, that's not the time to be having conversations. It's really not our position to have those conversations in uniform. It's our position as the leadership to have those conversations with the council in study sessions or phone calls or emails or things of that nature as well. But I do need to let everyone know that's part of the frustrations that I hear at every in-service and every roll call.
Right, and if you can help us, respond that, at least as far as I know, the city has not taken away funding from the police. In fact, we've given you more than we ever have. Is that correct?
You know what? Yeah, my understanding is when you're looking at our overall budget, yes, and I do need to add to, appreciated we were able to use some savings from vacant positions to purchase some much needed equipment as well. So I do want to express my appreciation to council for that as well.
Council President, did you have something to add? No, okay. And let's talk more offline about this because I think there's some other things that we could do, Chief, to help mitigate. It's not just the police, your officers that are talking about how we're defunding, but it is the public, and I think we need to put it all to rest and put out the correct information so we can talk more offline. Okay, everyone. We'll see you in October, and I so appreciate all of your input, and thank you all to staff who've participated as well, and have a great, what is it? Not Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend coming up. So thanks again, and we'll see you in a month.